What's up, friends? It has been a while. Welcome to my next episode of I Said What I Said. To start off this episode today, I want to talk about the John Cena farewell tour that we are getting in 2025. I am so excited. I'm kind of a mix of emotions. So, first and foremost, I am so excited. I cannot wait. I think it's going to be super, super fun, super nostalgic for, those of us who love that kind of shit. I am definitely one of those. And then also, of course, really, really sad because it's the last time that we're really gonna get Cena, I guess it sounds like. So I'm going under the assumption that this is his last time wrestling. He will not be wrestling again after 2025. So, very excited, but I want to talk about what matches could we see, what feuds could we see. I feel like it's been a really big topic going into the new year. So, wanted to take some time to talk about that. So, when I thought about John Cena farewell tour, I think the first and probably most obvious human that came to my head was Randy Orton, my king, right? I think there's a really, really, really good chance that we get some huge buildup for a Cena Randy match this year. I don't think it's gonna be WrestleMania necessarily, but I would love to see that headline for a SummerSlam or Bad Blood, Survivor Series, something. So well, I guess Survivor Series would be War Games, but something like that where we can kind of, go back to what that feud always was. And I would like to see Randy as more of a heel by then. Obviously, currently, right now, he is a baby face, but I would love to see him in more of a heel role by then. I know we're all kind of assuming that he's going to turn heel on Cody anyway coming up this year. So I would love to see, maybe after the Cody feud, have him have a feud with Cena and we see that really big match sometime this year. I think there's also a really good chance that he retires Cena. I know I think there's usually when you're talking about who's somebody getting retired or the retirement match, it's typically either the next step kind of thing, like a passing the torch sort of thing, or it's the long time rival or friend or whoever that would send you off sort of thing. I think for Cena, Randy's Randy's a good mix here of both a friendship and a feud that they've kind of gone back and forth over the years. So I would love for Randy to be the kind of retirement match, but I would also be down for someone like a Dom. Not necessarily passing the torch, but he's a young up and comer. Obviously, he is the hottest he has ever been in 2024. I expect that to only continue to rise in 2025. So I think Dom would also be a really cool retirement match for Cena, but I'm sure that Randy's going to be top of the list for these guys. As far as passing the torch, I think it's pretty clear that would be a Cody move. I think the only reason that I'm I don't know if Cody's the retirement match is because passing the torch, I get it. And I'm sure that Cody will be around for several more years, many more years. And I would love that. But Cody's hitting late 30s. I think he's almost 40, something like that. So he's not really the young up and comer at this point. So that's why I think that Dom kind of fits the idea of that. But I definitely think that we are getting Cody Cena. And I know that that's been talked about a lot, but I think Cody Cena makes a ton of sense for WrestleMania. That's kind of becoming my go-to match. And in the second half of this video that's going to go on our Patreon, I'm going to talk about some of my WrestleMania predictions and kind of go into those stories and feud ideas and those matches. And I definitely think that Cena Cody is a really, really strong candidate because that could easily headline, and that gets Cena and Cody headlining one of the nights as well. I think another thing that's going to be really interesting about the Cena farewell tour is what is it going to be structured like? Are we getting a shit ton of dream matches? Are we getting feuds? If we're getting feuds, how long are those feuds going to be? Because we only have 12 months to make this work. So you can't what are we getting feuds that are a month or two long? Are we getting longer feuds and we're only doing a few? I think it's going to be very interesting. And I think it's also going to be interesting how often is he going to be wrestling on Raw? Because it sounds like he's obviously going to be full-time in 2025. So how often is he going to be wrestling on Raw on top of the pay-per-views? So I think there's a lot of kind of open questions on that. I would assume he's wrestling on Raw at least once a month, maybe twice if we're lucky, plus the pay-per-views. So I think that leaves a lot of possibility open for other opponents that maybe aren't necessarily like feuds, but like could be really fun matches. Top of my list for that would be, you know, Seth Rollins. I think would be great. I don't know if they're gonna do a feud because Seth is typically babyface. But I think a match with Seth would be great. I think Gunther would be great. Something with him with like Solo and Jacob, kind of like, you know, Bloodline would be really, really fun. He's gotta interact with Roman at some point, I would assume. And I guess that kind of brings up another convo of like, is he on both shows? Is he on just Raw? Kind of leaves that open, because if he's only on one show and he's not crossing over, then that cuts out, you know, if he's on Raw, that cuts out Cody and Roman and those guys. And then if he's on SmackDown but not Raw, that cuts out like Gunther and Seth and Dom. So I think I would assume he would kind of bounce on both shows, maybe do like half the year on Raw, half on SmackDown, or like whatever. At least I kind of hope so, because I really would love to see all of these matches. But Seth is definitely top of my list to see him and Cena. I think him and Damian might be fun, especially for promos. I don't know if it's like just like me as like a child, but like Cena was always so fucking good at the promos. He hits like those one-liners that are really, really good. And I think Damian has shown a lot of progress kind of in that area in the last like 6 to 8 months, and he's really, really improved, and his mic skills are getting so good. So I would love to kind of see like a Cena Damian promo. Again, I think it's going to be hard because you're going to have a lot of baby faces here. So I don't know how they're going to do that. But I think a Cena Damian kind of promo segment would be super fun. And maybe it's just like kind of going for the title. Like, I mean, I'm a huge proponent of like, it does not have to be babyface heel. You can have two baby faces, you can have two heels, you can have two whatever, and like just kind of let the fucking crowd pick who they want. Like, let us just have a good time. Let the crowd and the fans just pick whoever they want to root for. And leave it at that. It doesn't have to be like babyface heel or like so black and white, you know, like let it be gray. So I think Cena Damian would be a really fun promo, possibly. Finn, I think, would just be like a fun match. Obviously, I said Dom already. Solo Jacob too. Gunther would be good. Braun Breaker is another one. I know a lot of people have been talking about them doing like Braun Gunther at some point, maybe that being a Mania match or SummerSlam or something. I think Braun could be really interesting for Cena. He is like one of the young up and comers, but he's obviously very cocky. He's got that attitude. I think he could be really interesting for a little like Raw feud for Cena. Maybe not like a big one that leads to a pay-per-view, possibly, depending on, again, how quickly they kind of move through these. But I think that could be a fun little like couple week, maybe a week, but like quick little like feud for Cena. I think Braun Breaker could be really fun. Paul is the one that people are like, please do not motherfucking do that on WrestleMania. I really don't want much of Cena Logan. I'd be open to that being like a 1 month thing, leads to a pay-per-view and then being done. I was very disappointed that Logan ended up not being retired, but shout out to him. He's a liar as always. But I feel like Cena Logan is something that they're gonna want to do because of the idea that Logan constantly goes viral. I personally don't know if I think that Logan is really bringing what they feel he's worth to wrestling. I don't know if he's bringing that amount of eyes to it for the amount of money he's getting, for the amount of appearances that he's doing. I don't think it matches up to the eyes that he's bringing in, but that's just me. But yeah, I'd be open to like Cena Logan in like a quick like couple weeks, maybe a month, do a pay-per-view match and like cut it there. I don't really want anything more than that. Other thing I kind of thought of is like, how much fun are we gonna have with this? Like, would Cena do like maybe like a little NXT, not like a run, but like maybe some appearances? I think might be fun. I don't know if they'd have him like wrestle in NXT necessarily, but I was kind of like brainstorming some ideas of things he could do. Obviously, for me, I'd love to see him with the family because those are my guys. This is my girl. So I think it'd be really fun. I think No Quarter Catch Crew would be interesting, especially now with Regal involved and like Lexis King and that whole thing. Like, obviously, Cena and Regal go way back. I think that could be really, really interesting if Cena's kind of on the other side of that against Regal. But also, I think one of the more obvious ones would be Trick Williams. Trick is obviously like the biggest star in NXT. He's their huge babyface. He's kind of like, he's their Cena right now. He's kind of in that Cena Cody spot. And I know Cena was on NXT. He was in the corner of, was it Trick? I don't even remember, but like I think that would be really cool to see Cena kind of like back down in NXT there. And maybe do a little story, maybe like he tags with Trick or something like that. I think that would be really, really fun. The biggest thing for the Cena farewell I think the biggest thing for the Cena farewell tour is that I want to have a fun time. I want to see lots of Cena wins. I'm down for some L's. I want to see him have, I think a title reign would be great. I don't think it's going to be Cody's. I think that's going to come from Gunther's title. But I want to have like a really good time. I think a big thing here is I think they're going to have to really mix the nostalgia matches and feuds and acts with the new up and comers that are kind of like dream matches, dream interactions, that sort of thing. R-Truth would be super fun. Just like have them team together or something like that. That was his like dream or whatever. I think would be super fun. So stuff like that are, things I really hope that we're getting out of the Cena farewell tour. And then obviously it's going to be super emotional at the end of the year. I feel like end of the year it has to be Randy. Now that I'm like talking it out, I think the last match has to be Randy. I don't see anybody else really fitting into that role in that spot. I feel like it's got to be Randy. So that's my final choice. I'm going with Randy for last match of the year, the retirement match. Randy Orton, John Cena. That's it. Next thing I want to talk about is layering stories and characters within wrestling. I feel like this is something that's like coming up more and more now. And, one of the things I said earlier was like, I love when like things get a little gray. It's not necessarily black and white where it's like baby face, heel, done. Like you root for the baby face and that's it. I like stories that are really, layered and chaotic and complicated. I think that makes it so much more realistic and fun. And so I kind of wanted to talk about that today because both WWE and AEW are doing it, but I think it's coming out very, very differently. Starting with Liv, Dom, and Rhea, I think a big problem that, everybody at this point, and so unfortunately, because I had really high hopes for this feud, everybody's kind of over Liv Rhea. And most people have been for a while now. That is not new information. I was one of the last ones to like hold on, but at this point, like even I'm out at just let it go, move on. But with Liv, Dom, and Rhea, I think the biggest thing off the bat was like logically, Liv and Dom are technically, they should be the baby faces. Finn is iffy, but like Liv and Dom should be the baby faces. Like Rhea did take Liv out. She injured her on purpose, tried to take her out. Like she did that. She turned on Liv in the tag team. That was all Rhea. Rhea did do all of those heel things because she was a heel. I also think the Dom turn kind of makes sense in a way because, his argument is like it was a toxic kind of relationship. She didn't really let Dom shine. It was very like, mommy dominates. She dominates everything. She dominated in her relationship with Dom. She dominated in the Judgment Day. She kind of like shows up and she runs shit and like kind of badass of her, but also it's like, it makes sense that like Dom was like, I love being with Liv because we're more like equals and she truly like supports me even in my losses. Like Rhea didn't support him when he lost the title. She was like, you better get that shit back or don't come back. That's some crazy toxic shit, right? So I think all of that really makes sense. But now because Rhea is so well loved, and I understand that, but because she's so well loved, her and Damian were cheered anyway. And I think everybody's really loved Rhea and Damian's kind of dynamic. They're like brother-sister dynamic. And I do think it's really cool to have a brother-sister dynamic like that because you don't get that very often in wrestling. And so Terra Twins become quite literally fucking unstoppable. But I think what's interesting and what was one of the biggest frustrations to me about this feud outside of the women's booking was Liv and Dom should technically be the baby faces. I think it's fine that it ended up being Rhea and Damian. That's whatever. But there was a lot that was left unsaid that didn't make sense. So like there was one promo that Rhea and Damian did that was talking about like, yeah, we did fuck y'all over basically. And like, we don't care. That's the kind of stuff that like, we didn't really touch on that. Like we didn't really go into like talking about Rhea did this to Liv. Rhea turned on Liv. Rhea hurt Liv. Rhea did all these things. And the way that Rhea treated Dom. We didn't really go into that. Like they kind of admitted it once and like that was it. We just moved on. But they didn't go into specifics. They were just like, yeah, like we did everything that you said we did, and that's it. And then we kind of just moved on from that. But I feel like if we really tapped into something like that, it would have made the story a lot better. Now, the constant Terror Twins overbooking was going to be what it was, but I think it would have helped the storyline a little bit, because I think there was also a lot of like, around the time of SummerSlam when Dom turned on Liv, I think there was also a lot of confusion by people of like, what was Dom's, reasoning. And I also think so much goes on in wrestling that like when you're talking about like over a year ago that like Rhea took out Liv, and like back when they tag team, I don't even fucking remember how long that was. Like people forget that like that happens. Like they forget sometimes that far back, especially if they're not like Liv Morgan stans. Sometimes like people who aren't huge fans of like Liv or Rhea, they're gonna forget that stuff happened. So you have to bring that stuff back. So I definitely think that left a lot to be desired in that feud, and I definitely think it would have given it a little bit more. I'm just not really sure why they kind of left that out. I mean, I think it was very clear that like Rhea and Damian were going to be cheered regardless. So I just wish that they kind of like added a little bit more to that. Another one like this that really bothers me is the Bloodline story. And I've said it so many times on the podcast, but it's like, it doesn't make any sense. And then they don't give explanations for it. And that's what like drives me insane. So Roman, obviously, in like logically, objectively looking at the storyline and like all of the history with the Bloodline, Roman was a very like toxic, abusive leader of the group. That just is what it is. That you can't argue that. That is a fact. He was a toxic, abusive leader of the group. And looking at it, like everyone except Jimmy kind of breaks away. Sammy leaves, Jay leaves, Solo's obviously on his own when Roman took time off. And so now we come back and, the whole Jimmy Jay thing also never made sense to me. And I talked about that a long time ago, where like Jimmy hits Jay, or, he super kicked Jay so that Jay would lose the match against Roman, to make sure that Jay never became like Roman, because he didn't want him to be like Roman. But then Jimmy just goes back to Roman. And like that, there's a big ass fucking hole in that story. Like that doesn't literally logically does not make any sense within a story. Like why, if you're trying to protect him, first of all, if you're trying to protect him from being like Roman, kicking him in the face, that's just going to piss him off. That was rude. That is not how you do that. But even so, rolling with that, then why would Jimmy then go back with Roman? That doesn't make any sense. So that was weird off the bat, right? Fast forward, Jay is basically like, if you like try to boss me around or like tell us what to do or whatever, like I'm not doing this. And to be fair, Jay stood on business like twice, and he called him out, was like, you don't tell me what to do. But nothing really, like Roman didn't do anything. He definitely didn't apologize. He didn't like, nothing really progressed with Roman as a character, and Jay just went to team with him. Nothing really happened. Nothing really changed. He just kind of went to team with him, and like once or twice he was like, don't tell him what to do. And like, that was it. But like Roman didn't make any of like the changes that like Jay asked him to, and he went anyway. To me, that doesn't make sense. So then Sammy, I think, was probably the worst one, because he's like, I will only team with you if you apologize to Jay. And Roman says, no. And Sammy goes, okay, I will tag with you anyway. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And it's like, and maybe and again, I might be thinking about this like too, like logically. I may be going too in depth on this, but it's shit like that like that kind of ruins it for me. Because not like ruins it, but then I'm like, it takes me out a little bit, because I'm like, none of this makes sense anymore. Like we're having back to back confusing kind of changes and moves happening. Like none of this makes sense, and it feels like they're really I also think they kind of rushed it, to be honest. I think they kind of rushed Jay and Sammy going back so that they could do War Games, and I get it. War Games was a huge spot. It was a big match. I totally get why they wanted that, but I think it definitely hurt the team and like the storyline for me, because I'm looking at that and I'm like, that none of that makes sense. And like, in my opinion, that just made like Jay and Sammy look really bad. Like that just kind of made them look like bitches, if I'm gonna be real. So then like, they go to Seth, and Seth finally is the only fucking one standing on business here to be like, no, he hasn't apologized. He hasn't changed. He's not a better person. Like he still is who he was when he did all these things to us. So like, no, I'm not gonna like go and tag with him and support him and help him and whatever else. That makes sense. I needed more of that from like Sammy, Jay, and Jimmy. But now we just like, we did the War Games match there, and they're just like a team again. Nothing changed. They're just like a team again, and it's all the same. And it's just super weird to me. And I wish that there weren't so many holes in a lot of these stories. And it makes me feel like they're kind of just like pushing the story forward so that like they can get like, you know, the dream match everybody wants or whatever at the pay-per-view. So I don't know. Wish we had a little bit more of stronger decisions being made there. The other one I was going to talk about was the AEW story that they have going on. So they have the Death Riders, Mox's group storyline going on where they're kind of like taking over AEW, right? And so I actually really like the way that this is layered. It's very layered, it's very chaotic, but they're giving us most of the information that we need. So obviously it starts with, you know, Mox comes out, Death Riders come out, they attack Bryan Danielson, they take him out, they basically killed him. That in itself starts the layers because Bryan Danielson and Mox are longtime friends, longtime partners. They were in Blackpool Combat Club together for how many years? Like, huge best friends. Mox comes out with his new group and literally, like, kills him with a bag over his head. Takes out Bryan Danielson, right? So we're already starting with the complicated layers off the bat. On top of this, still within this same thing, we have Wheeler Yuta. Wheeler is the only one in Mox's group that is on Danielson's side because Danielson trained him. He was a huge mentor to him. That's his idol. So he stays on Danielson's side and he kind of turns on Mox, Claudio, and Pac, right? So moving forward, it basically becomes, you know, Danielson is retired from full-time wrestling. He's too injured. He's going away for a while. And that was like months ago. We still have not seen Danielson back. So like he's gone for a really long time, right? So with all of that, and now Mox and the Death Riders just continuing to take people out. And they're not taking out Wheeler because they want him to side with them. But they're taking out everybody else. They're going after Orange Cassidy, and they have problems with Hangman and Jay White, which I'll get into in a second. But like, so they're taking out all these different people. They took out Brandon Cutler. And so eventually Wheeler's like, I don't really have like a choice. I kind of have to just fall in line because Danielson that was my rock and he's gone, right? When they take out Danielson. So that adds layers to this in itself, just within that first kind of match feud, right? So after that, we add in Orange Cassidy, Darby Allin, and then Hangman and Jay White. So starting with Darby and Orange. Darby is kind of like, he's the main guy. He's leading this charge against Mox and the Death Riders from trying to take over AEW, and Orange is kind of right behind him. But for a while, Orange is like, he's like, I'm not like, not that bitch. I'm not that guy. I don't like step up and lead people like that. I don't like, I'm not the one to like go after Mox. And so it kind of goes into like Darby's recruiting all of these AEW originals that have been here forever. And like Garcia and Private Party, who are also, you know, AEW originals, are trying to get Orange to like, you know, stand on your shit, stand on business. Let's like, you can obviously, you're one of the best guys here. Like you could obviously be a leader and you can do this. And so now we're getting all these like side stories, right? So like Darby's recruiting AEW originals to kind of step up. Garcia and Private Party, as well as like Conglomeration Group, like they're all trying to get Orange to like, you know, stand up, man up, be on your shit, right? To kind of step up to Mox. And that works for a while. Orange steps up to the Death Riders repeatedly. He does get smacked pretty much every single time. But we're seeing this in layers, and we're seeing all of the, you know, AEW stars coming together. We're seeing Orange try to stand up, you know, for everybody, and especially after they take out Chuck Taylor, who's one of Orange's best friends, right? So Death Riders take him out. Orange like really stands up after that. And then we add Hangman and Jay White to the mix. So Hangman is kind of he's kind of chilling in like a tweener zone right now, because in very similar to Rhea Liv, Swerve was supposed to be the heel in their feud, but everybody loves Swerve, so Hangman kind of became the heel in that feud. So he's kind of like in tweener mode right now, where like people love Hangman, but he's kind of a heel, but depending on who he's facing, kind of a face. He's in the middle right now. Versus Jay White, who I think is big time babyface right now. But they have their own little feud going on as they're both also actively going after Mox, because Hangman wants the title, Jay White wants the title, but he also wants to take out Mox. And so now we're dealing with, they're both going after Mox, but they're both also feuding against each other because Hangman is so fucking petty that he keeps trying to take out Jay White while simultaneously they're both trying to take out Mox with Orange, and it's very, very complicated. So things like this, and Mox is, just to give an overall view, Mox's, purpose here is basically to, like, he's going to try to force everybody to be better. If you're not going to be better, he's going to take you out. He wants everybody to be at like 110%. He wants everybody to be like, reach their potential, be the best you can be, make AEW better, all that kind of stuff. So like the kind of silly, funny gimmicks, like Orange does like the little kicks and whatever. And he's like, we're not doing that shit no more. Okay. We are hardcore wrestling. We are being the best that we can be. We're all hitting our potential. Like, no more like, silly shit kind of thing. And that's been pretty clear from like, I think only a couple weeks after they started the feud with Danielson and everyone, but way back at the beginning of my rant here. So I think AEW has done a really, really good job with kind of adding all of these different layers to it. Now, to be fair, I'm recording this on Sunday, the 29th, so we just watched World's End last night, and they brought out FTR and Copeland to go against Mox, Wheeler, and Claudio after the four-way match that was Mox, Orange, Hangman, Jay White. I'm not a fan of this. I don't really like FTR at all, but I don't really love FTR and Copeland kind of just jumping into the middle of this. I think we're slowly starting to add a little bit too much to the one kind of feud going on, and I don't know if they make a ton of sense. I think they're bringing in Copeland for like a veteran point of view, where like Mox is going after all of these people, especially like the up-and-comers, so there's like a veteran coming in to be like, no, stop that shit. And FTR are big, like, I mean, I know they were in NXT or whatever for a little while, but like they're big AEW guys, right? They're one of the best tag teams in AEW apparently. So that, I think FTR kind of makes sense storyline wise, like save AEW kind of thing. I don't know if Copeland necessarily makes sense there. But I didn't know that apparently in real life they are best friends, and they're doing this right before the show in their hometown. They all live in Asheville, North Carolina, so which is where they're doing Wednesday show. So I guess that's what we're doing this for, sure, whatever. So adding to that at the end, since we just watched World's End, I didn't love that at the end there. I think we need to kind of figure that out. I think the timing of it is just not great. But everything else, I really, really love the layers to this. And I don't even think we've finished with the layers to this, because what's really interesting is Mox took out Brandon Cutler, and that was right after the Young Bucks left AEW. Like, they got in their trucks, they were like, fuck this shit, we are leaving. And they didn't tell Jack Perry that they were leaving. Jack walked into their office and they were packing their shit and they were leaving. And Jack was like, I'm not leaving, like I'm saying. And so we haven't seen the Young Bucks in AEW since then. That was probably like a month and a half ago, I would say, roughly, give or take. And so they just kind of dipped. They left Jack there. Jack then lost the title, and we haven't seen Jack on TV in about a month. So looking at that, Jack just showed up in New Japan a few weeks ago, and he has a match coming up later this week. And so Young Bucks popped up at the last show that Jack was at, and they like helped him win or whatever. And then afterwards they're, Jack's being interviewed, and the Young Bucks come up, and he's like, basically like, where the fuck y'all been? He's like, y'all dipped. I lost my title. Like, what is going on? And he's kind of pissed off at them. And what's interesting about this is that right when Mox and the Death Riders first kind of came out and took over, there's a moment with Jack and Mox where Jack is like, or when Mox is like, he's looking at Jack and he's like, I always liked you. No matter what happens, I always liked you. And it's very interesting because now we're seeing tension with Young Bucks and Jack, because they just kind of fucking left him there and dipped on everybody, on the whole company. And Mox says he likes Jack no matter what happened. So now it's like, are we getting Jack joining the Death Riders? Very interesting. So there's just like, there's so many layers to this that I think have been really, really well thought out. Shout out to RJ City, because I'm pretty sure he's had a big hand in this storyline, and he also had a big hand in the Mariah May Tony Storm feud, which has been beautifully booked as well. So shout out RJ City, who's apparently like a fucking god at booking and storylines and everything else. But yeah, so super excited to see where the Mox Death Riders storyline goes. Hopefully the Copeland FTR thing is like short-lived, no offense. And then we kind of move on to like back to where we were with like Darby, Orange, Hangman Jay, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think that was just something I wanted to talk about a little bit. I think WWE could definitely use some work on that. Like they've been great at having like putting the big matches together, but I wish that there was some more. They were better at kind of, fleshing out those layers within the storyline, because I think it makes it so much better. It's kind of like, with Seth and Punk, we're seeing more of that real life shit come to life. Like those real lines that like people are thinking that they don't normally say on TV, and we're seeing those within the Seth CM Punk kind of feuds within those promo packages or promos and stuff. And so just like a little more of that, I think we need to like just really flesh out some of those storylines, and maybe not rush to the match before the characters in the story is ready, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. Thank you so much for your patience in waiting for my next I Said What I Said episode. I am going to now go make the second half of this. That's going to be on our Patreon. Just $3 to view all of my extra kind of bonus I Said What I Said episodes. I am going to be talking about all of my WrestleMania predictions. I'm going to be talking about Daddy Dom. I'm going to be talking about Seth Rollins and CM Punk. And then I'm also going to be talking about kind of taking an overall look at Cody's title reign since he won at WrestleMania, and kind of good, bad, pros, cons, all those kinds of things. But I'm super excited to talk about WrestleMania and all those predictions for this year. So if you have any interest in that, please go check out our Patreon. We have that and a lot of extra content, especially coming up in the next week or so. To that platform. So I'm super excited. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like the video and subscribe if you haven't already to my YouTube channel. And thanks so much for watching.